Hello there and welcome to another Coffee with Colin, and thank you for joining me. I don't watch the news, don't listen to the news, and haven't done for the last 20 or 25 years. And if you're wondering why, well, the answer is very simple. The news is typically negative. And why is it negative? Because negative sells, bad news sells. The vast majority of news out there is positive, but nobody wants to hear that. They only want to hear the exceptional. They only want to hear the down and dirty. And so that's what news is. That's why I choose not to listen to it. And it came back to mind this week because I just finished reading a book. A good friend of mine, James Kavanagh, sent me this wonderful book called Factfulness. Absolutely wonderful book called Factfulness. And it discusses the real world, but it discusses it in a fact-based way rather than a hyped way. And it suggests that the world is in fact a bad place. But you know what? It's never been better than it is currently. It isn't a bad place, but it's never been better than it is currently. And even better news is that it's getting better all of the time. Yes, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world. There's a lot of poverty out there. But the vast majority of humankind has moved on in the last 30, 40, 50 years to phenomenal levels, you and me included. And one of the analogies used in the book is where Hans Rosling suggests that taking a newsreel view of the world is a bit like me using my left foot as my profile picture. Yes, it's part of me, but it's only one small part of me, and me using my left foot as a profile picture and asking you to form an opinion, a factful, truthful opinion about all of me is frankly absurd. So taking a newsreel view of the world only is a little bit like me using my left foot as a profile picture. It doesn't show the whole picture by a long shot. And it got me thinking about one of the concepts put forward by my all-time favourite thought leader, the late great Stephen Covey, where he spoke of the circles of influence and concern. And I just sketched it out here for you. If you can imagine, that's you in the middle or me in the middle, and around us we've got the circle of influence, the circle that you and I can actually have an impact on, and beyond that is the wider world. It's our circle of concern. It's the stuff that we're concerned about, we're aware of in the wider world, but in truth we can impact it very little. What we can impact in a huge way is our circle of influence, the circle in the middle. Your world or my world versus the world. And it got me thinking about a phrase that I heard over the years, and the phrase is, they is us. They is us. Have you ever heard yourself saying, I wish they would, if only they would, they should? Well, what you're talking about really is somebody else, somebody out there in the circle of concern. You should really be talking about what you can do, because they is us, because the only thing you and I can actually influence is our own circle of influence, our own world, not the world at large. However, if we influence positively our own world, well then the world at large gets better by default. So instead of talking about the community of they out there and what they should do, well then why don't you and I focus in this next week on sorting out something within our own world? Because if we sort something out in our own world, in the circle of influence, well then the circle of concern changes automatically. If we work in the circle of influence, well then over time our circle of influence grows, and consequently the circle of concern shrinks. The corollary is also true. If we spend all of our time in the circle of concern, if we spend all of our time focused on what they should do to make our little world a better place, well then our little world actually shrinks. It becomes littler. So we're far better off focusing on what we can do to make our world a better place. That's because that's the only thing we're in control of. Make our world a better place. If we do, our circle of influence will expand and our circle of concern grows smaller. Some great news this weekend. They are sending a probe to the sun, to our sun, to the nearest star, so that we can learn more about how our star works to keep us alive, so that we can in turn understand the universe at large a little more. That's wonderful news. But on the basis that they are sending a probe to the sun, and they is us, well then we are sending a probe to the sun. We, mankind, are sending a probe to the sun. How cool is that? Not all of us can be space explorers. Not all of us are destined to be space explorers, but we can all be self-explorers. And if we're all self-explorers, if we all do our own internal work first, well then our circle of influence will get better and our circle of influence will expand. And if it does so, well then the world at large, our world improves for sure, and the world at large improves also, albeit imperceptibly. But that's how all progress happens over time. Albeit imperceptible changes over time has a huge positive effect over time. Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, suggests we detect rather than invent our missions in life. We detect rather than invent our missions in life. And the question is, what's your mission in life? I'm detecting mine. Over time, I'm detecting mine. And the question I'm putting out there for you today is, what's your mission in life? Are you beginning to detect it? Are you resisting it? What's your mission in life? What work can you do in your circle of influence that will have a positive impact in your world, and as a result, have a positive impact on the world? And it's very interesting that this weekend the Parker Solar Probe is being launched to the sun, because you and I, our entire existence is having goes around the sun. That's what we do, a full 365 days to rotate once around the sun. I've had 55 goes around the sun to date. How many have you had? Question is, how many have you got left? It's got nothing to do with how many you've had. Question is, how many have you got left? I've had 55 goes. I'm hoping for another 55 goes. But that's not up to me. That's up to the man above. Okay. But in the meantime, we detect our missions in life. And the question is, what's mine and what's yours? I'm working to detect mine, and I'd ask that you work to detect yours. And as a stepping stone towards that, let me ask you to do something in this next week. In this next week, listen to the language you use. Is it they should, if only they would? If so, please change that. I can, if only I would. Change your language, work on your circle of influence, and then if you do, automatically your world will become better, and the world at large will become better too. And thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colin. You can possibly hear the rain on the roof of my studio here as the rain beats down on this beautiful August summer's day here in Ireland. But thank you for joining with this week's Coffee with Colin. Hope and trust, as ever, you got something from it. If you have done, you think somebody else would benefit, please pass the link on. If it's your first time here and you'd like more of this type of stuff, well then go to the homepage, ColinO'BrienMotivation.com, leave me some details, and I'll make sure you get a link like this on a weekly basis. Most importantly, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And then equally as importantly, please come back next week and we share another coffee together, and I'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. Between now and then, get some good coffee for sure, get some fresh air for sure, get some R&R. If you spend a lot of time alone, I recommend you go meet some people. Conversely, if you spend a lot of time with people, I recommend you take a little time alone. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, get stuck in, make next week count, and I'll see you here this time next week for another Coffee with Colin. Sláinte. I really love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.